In 2006, a man named Andrew Lawfer won $10 million in the New York State lottery. 3 years later, he was bankrupt, divorced, living in a rented room, and in an interview he gave to a small local newspaper, he said something that stopped me cold when I first read it. He said, "The money didn't change me, it revealed me. Now hold that thought. Because today we're not talking about $10 million. We're not even talking about $10 billion. We're talking about $1 trillion, 12 zeros, a number so large that if you spent $1 million every single day starting from the year Julius Caesar was born, you still wouldn't have spent it all by today." And the question I want to answer isn't what would you buy? Everyone asks that. It's the wrong question. The real question is this: what does that kind of money do to a human being, psychologically, socially, physically, at every single stage of having it? What happens in the first 24 hours, the first week, the first year, a decade in? Because the research on extreme wealth, and yes, there is real research on this, tells a story that almost nobody talks about. A story that is stranger, darker, and more fascinating than any luxury lifestyle video you've ever watched. This is that story. Let's begin. The first 24 hours. The silence before the storm. It's a Wednesday morning, 6:52 a.m. You're still in bed. Your phone buzzes. You assume it's an alarm or maybe a news alert, something about a sports game or a political scandal you don't care about. You pick it up, you open the notification, and there it is, a wire transfer confirmation. 12 digits, a number your brain physically refuses to process in a single reading. You count the zeros, once, twice, 3 times. Here's something neuroscientists actually know. When the human brain encounters a number it cannot place within its existing framework of experience, it doesn't feel joy, it doesn't feel excitement. It enters a state researchers call cognitive dissociation, a temporary disconnection between what you're seeing and what you're feeling. In simple terms, your brain goes quiet, no cheering, no tears, no Hollywood moment, just silence. And a strange, cold clarity. You call your financial advisor. He picks up on the second ring, which is unusual because he never picks up before 9 a.m. You already know, you say. "I've been up since 3, he answers. "What do I do?" He pauses, and what he says next is the first sign that your old life is already ending. Nothing. You do absolutely nothing. Don't call anyone. Don't go online. Don't leave your house. And for the love of God, do not post anything. You hang up and sit on the edge of your bed. Within 2 hours, 3 things happen simultaneously that you didn't plan and didn't ask for. First, a private security firm your advisor retained contacts you to arrange an emergency assessment of your home. A man in a gray suit arrives and walks through every room, checking windows and door locks, asking quiet questions about your daily routine. Second, a legal team begins the process of moving your identity, not your name, your financial identity. Restructuring your ownership through layers of holding companies and legal entities, so that no single document anywhere on Earth ties your name directly to $1 trillion. Third, and this is the one that hits you the hardest, your advisor calls back and says, "The 6 people who processed this transfer on the banking side, we're managing that situation." Managing it how, you ask? NDAs, incentives, legal agreements, standard protocol. You sit with that sentence for a long time. Standard protocol. Because that phrase, right there, in the first morning of your new life, tells you something fundamental. There is a world that operates above the one you've always lived in, a world with its own rules, its own language, its own infrastructure, and you just got admitted. You didn't knock, you didn't apply, the door just opened, and it opened from the inside. The first week, when the world learns your name. You make it 4 days. 4 days of silence, of secured locations, of eating meals delivered in unmarked bags. 4 days of meetings with people you've never met who speak in calm, measured tones about things like jurisdictional exposure and media containment timelines. And then, on the 5th day, a Thursday, a financial journalist in London publishes a piece with a headline that reads, "The world's first trillionaire has arrived. We don't know who they are yet." The article doesn't name you. It doesn't have to. Within 36 hours, 3 separate investigative teams from major publications are already narrowing it down. Your communications advisor walks into the room where you've been staying and puts a tablet on the table in front of you. You need to see this, she says. On the screen is a spreadsheet. Names, addresses, relationships, people connected to you, your parents, your siblings, 3 former colleagues, an ex-partner from 7 years ago who you haven't spoken to since. What is this, you ask? This, she says, is the list of people who will receive media contact within the next 48 hours. You stare at it. Your mother, she continues, has already been approached once. She said she had no comment, which was exactly right, but they'll be back. Here is what nobody tells you about extreme wealth. The moment the world finds out, even a rumor, even a whisper, you stop being a person to almost everyone around you. You become a story. And the people who love you become sources. Your phone, the old one, the one with your original number, receives 847 messages in a 72-hour window. Your advisor's team catalogs them. The breakdown is revealing. 61% are from people you haven't spoken to in years. Old classmates, distant relatives, former neighbors. The messages all have a similar warmth, a similar nostalgia. Been thinking about you. Hope you're well. Would love to reconnect. 23% are from people you know well and genuinely care about. Close friends, family members, who sound confused and worried and just want to know if you're okay. 11% are from strangers with business proposals, investment pitches, and requests for donations. And 5%, the 5% that keeps you up at night, are from people who are angry, people who feel entitled, people who have decided without ever meeting you that you owe them something simply because you have it and they don't. That 5% is the first real taste of what it means to be a target. And once you're a target, you never fully stop being one. The first month, the loneliness that no one talks about. There's a study conducted by researchers at Harvard that found a consistent pattern among individuals who experience sudden, extreme wealth. Within the first 30 days, the average number of people they feel they can speak to honestly drops by 74%. 74%. Think about that. The people you used to call when something was wrong, the people you'd sit with in silence and feel comfortable, the people who knew your bad days as well as your good ones. 3/4 of them, gone. Not physically, they're still there. They still call, they still send messages. But you can no longer speak to them the way you used to, because every conversation now has a weight to it, a gravitational pull. And you can feel it, the slight shift in how they speak to you, the careful way they choose their words, the thing they're not saying that sits between every sentence like a stone. Money at this scale doesn't just change your relationship with other people. It changes other people's relationship with themselves when they're around you. You notice it first with your closest friend. You've known him for 15 years. You've been through genuinely hard things together. And one evening, 3 weeks in, he comes to visit you at the new residence your security team has arranged. You order dinner, you sit across from each other, and for the first time in 15 years, there is an awkward silence. He breaks it. So, are you happy? And you realize with a strange sadness that he's not asking because he's curious. He's asking because he doesn't know what else to say. Because the person sitting across from him is, technically, still you. Same face, same voice, same memories. But $1 trillion is sitting in the room with you, and it takes up all the space. I don't know yet, you say, and that's the most honest thing you've said all month. He nods, and you can see in his face that he expected a different answer, something more dramatic, either wild joy or visible despair, something that would make the story easier to tell when he gets home tonight. What he got instead was uncertainty. And uncertainty at this scale is the one thing people don't know how to respond to. He leaves at 9 p.m. You sit in a room that costs more per night than most people's monthly rent, and you feel something that the money cannot touch. Ordinary loneliness, the kind that has nothing to do with how much you own. The first 6 months, learning the rules of a world you didn't know existed. By month 3, you stop being shocked. This is the transition most people on the outside don't understand. They imagine extreme wealth as a permanent state of amazement. Every day, a new revelation, a new luxury, a new experience that leaves you breathless. The reality is more clinical than that. What actually happens in the first 6 months is education. rapid, overwhelming, non-optional education in the mechanics of a world that operates entirely above the one you came from. You learn, for example, that the wealthiest individuals on Earth do not store money in banks the way you used to. Banks at this level are almost irrelevant. Your wealth exists primarily as equity. Ownership stakes in companies, in real estate portfolios, in infrastructure projects, in commodities. Actual cash is a small and almost symbolic fraction of the total. Your lead financial strategist, or a woman who previously managed sovereign wealth funds for 2 different governments, explains it to you in a meeting that lasts 4 hours. Think of your wealth as a living organism, she says. It grows, it breathes, it has needs. Your job is not to spend it. Your job is to understand it. Because if you don't understand it, it will make decisions without you. How does money make decisions, you ask? She smiles, not warmly, but precisely, through the people who manage it, through the systems that hold it, through the legal structures that define it. Wealth at your level has momentum. It moves. And if you're not directing that movement, someone else is. You also learn in these 6 months about the geopolitical dimension of your new reality. This is something that genuinely surprises you. $1 trillion is not just a personal financial position. It is, by the metrics of global economics, a geopolitical force. Your net worth exceeds the GDP of over 150 countries. The decisions you make, which industries to invest in, which regions to enter, which technologies to fund, will have real, measurable effects on real human lives in ways that no private individual has ever had to reckon with before. A senior advisor puts it bluntly in a meeting you'll remember for the rest of your life. You're not just a rich person anymore, he says. You are a power, and powers have enemies, not personal enemies, structural enemies, people and institutions who will oppose you not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. And what do I represent, you ask? He looks at you steadily. The end of a certain kind of order, the idea that no single private individual should ever hold this much concentrated power. Some of the most powerful governments in the world are having private conversations right now about what to do about you. You go home that evening and you sit in your new study, a room you've barely spent time in yet, with books on the shelves you haven't read, and you think about Andrew Loffer. The money isn't showing you who you are. It's showing you what the world actually is. The first year. The identity question. Nobody can answer for you 12 months in. And there is a question that surfaces at 3 a.m. more nights than you'd like to admit. Who are you? Not philosophically, practically. Before the $1 trillion, the answer was simple, assembled from ordinary coordinates: your job, your neighborhood, the coffee shop you went to on Saturdays, the football team you followed, the group chat with old friends that stayed active through good and bad weeks alike. These things still technically exist. The coffee shop is still there, the football team still plays, the group chat still buzzes. But you are no longer in those coordinates, and the question of where you actually are, personally, not geographically, is one that your legal team cannot answer, your financial advisors cannot answer, and your security detail definitely cannot answer. A psychiatrist who specializes in working with ultra-high net worth individuals explains the phenomenon in one of your sessions. The self is constructed relationally, she says. We know who we are partly by how other people respond to us. When the wealth becomes this extreme, the responses you receive from almost everyone are distorted. They're responding to the money, not to you. And over time, it becomes genuinely difficult to locate yourself beneath all of that. So what do? You ask. Most people at your level, she says, make one of 2 choices. They either retreat entirely, build walls, minimize contact, live inside a gilded isolation, or they redirect the energy outward into projects, into causes, into building things that have nothing to do with accumulating more and everything to do with leaving something. Which one works better, you ask? She considers this for a moment. The second one, almost always. And so, quietly, without a press release, without an announcement, you begin. You fund a hospital in a country that cannot afford one. Not because a PR team told you it would look good, not because a tax attorney told you it was efficient, but because the decision feels, for the first time in 12 months, like it came from you, from the part of you that existed before the 12 zeros. The part that can't be restructured into a holding company or protected by a non-disclosure agreement. It is a small act relative to what you have. and it is the first moment in a year that feels entirely real. Years 2 through 5. Power, enemies, and the map of the world. By year 2, something has shifted in how the world engages with you. The initial frenzy has settled. The media has filed you into a category of the Trillionaire and moved on to the next story, the way media always does. But underneath that surface calm, things are moving. 3 governments have initiated formal legislative conversations about new taxation frameworks, explicitly designed to address, and here's the phrase that appears in actual policy documents you're shown, historically unprecedented private wealth concentration. In plain language, they're writing laws about you specifically, without naming you, but about you. Your legal team briefs you on the situation with a calm that you've come to recognize as professional rather than genuine. This is expected, your lead attorney says, and it's manageable. But it does mean you need to make some decisions about where your primary legal residency is going to be, and soon. You look at a map of the world that someone has placed on the conference table. Certain countries are highlighted in green, favorable, others in yellow, uncertain, a handful in red. There are more reds than there used to be, you observe. Yes, she says, that's likely to continue. At the same time, and this is the duality that defines years 2 through 5, your capacity to do things expands in ways that are genuinely extraordinary. You fund a desalination project that provides clean water to 4 million people who previously had none. You invest in a battery technology startup that, within 18 months, produces a breakthrough that accelerates the global energy transition by an estimated decade. You establish an agricultural initiative across sub-Saharan Africa that increases crop yields by 40% in the first growing season. These are not charity, they are investments, financial and human simultaneously. And they produce something that the first 24 hours of your new life did not, genuine consequence. The kind where your decision on a Tuesday morning in a conference room becomes food in someone's bowl on a Thursday evening in a village you've never visited and may never visit. This is the part of extreme wealth that nobody talks about in the lifestyle videos. Not the jets and the art and the real estate, the consequence. The raw, vertiginous fact that at this scale, what you choose not to do is as significant as what you choose to do. And living with that knowledge, carrying it every day, is not something that gets easier with time. It just gets more familiar. A decade in. The view from the top of the world, 10 years. You are sitting on the terrace of a property in a coastal country, watching the sun drop below the horizon. A journalist, one of the very few you've agreed to meet over the years, asks you the question that everyone always asks, are you happy? And you think about your closest friend sitting across from you at dinner 3 weeks into all of this, the awkward silence, the question he asked because he didn't know what else to say. You think about the psychiatrist and her 2 choices, retreat or redirect. You think about the hospital, the water, the crops, the battery, the 4 million people who have no idea who paid for the pipe that brings them clean water every morning. You think about your mother, who still calls every Sunday, whose voice still sounds exactly the same as it did before any of this, who still asks if you're eating enough and sleeping properly, whose ordinary, unconditional love has been the single most valuable thing in the last decade, more valuable than anything with a price tag. Are you happy? The journalist asks again. You take a moment. I'm something more interesting than happy, you say. I'm awake, completely awake. I see the world as it actually is, not as I was told it was, and that's something that can't be taken back. Would you change it? He asks. You look at the horizon. That's the wrong question, you say. The right question is, what do you do with it once you have it? What do you build? What do you fix? What do you leave? And what's your answer? You smile, slowly, genuinely. I'm still writing it. Here's what a decade of being the world's only trillionaire actually teaches you. Money at this scale is not a destination. It is a pressure system, like weather. It doesn't care about you. It doesn't reward you. It simply amplifies whatever is already there. The courage or the cowardice, the generosity or the greed, the clarity or the confusion. Andrew Lawfer was right. The money doesn't change you, it reveals you. The question, the one worth asking, whether you have $47 in your pocket or 12 zeros in an account somewhere, is the same question it's always been. When it reveals you, what will it find?